Is Texas gonna kill me? These are the things you need to know about if you are considering moving to Texas. Hey y'all, it's me, Melanie Beran with Wyatt Properties, myhomeinhouston.com. Proud native Texan, I have lived here all my life. I could not be prouder of my home state, but that's not to say that there aren't a few tricky things about living here. I actually was on the phone with a friend of mine from Ohio the other day, and the kids were at the park, and the little one was running on the hill, and I was like, hey, the fire ants. And then I asked my friend from Ohio, hey, do you all have fire ants? He's like, fire ants, one of the many delightful things we have here in Texas. So we will get to those fire ants in a minute. The first way that Texas might try to kill you is snakes. Here's the deal, I don't like them. When we go to the zoo, my kids call it's a daddy job to take them into the reptile house because mommy's not going in there. But don't worry, the reality is there are snakes in Texas. I've never had one in my house. I've never had one in my garage. We are outdoor people with our kids, and I'm 30-something, 33, took me a minute. I'm 33 years old, and I could probably count on my fingers the number of times that I've encountered a snake in Texas. So that's one of the things that people think about, but it's really typically not that big of a deal. If you are going somewhere out that is more rural, it is going to be a little bit more of a likelihood. We have some friends that have a ranch out in the country. They do see snakes on their property. That's a part of country life. But here in the suburbs, that's really not a part of our day-to-day life typically. So no, Texas probably isn't trying to kill you with snakes. We do, however, have some amazing heat. Again, I'm a native Texan. If the weather's below 70, I don't know how to dress. Do I wear a jacket? Do I wear a parka? What is happening? How do I layer? I don't know, but I know that between, mid-April and mid-October, I'm looking at 80s and above. 80s into the 100s, even on occasion 105, 110, depending on where you are in Texas, of course. I'm here in the Houston area. You just need to be aware that we do have the heat and the humidity. Humidity is when you walk outside and it feels like you're swimming. I love it here. I am used to it. But people who are not used to it, it does take some getting used to, or some people just never get used to it and just kind of live with it and deal with it. So Texas heat, it is something to be aware of. It is something, if you are moving from somewhere else, I make sure that I point it out and just say, hey, like I've got out of state family and they try not to visit Texas in July or August because it's just hot. It's amazing. Go jump in the pool all day, every day. But the heat is another way that Texas does make it a little difficult to live here. Here on the Gulf Coast, we also have hurricanes. Typically, the vast majority of damage from a hurricane is going to be property damage, flood damage. In my life, like I said, I've lived here in the Houston Gulf Coast for 33 years. I've had 4 major hurricanes and a tropical storm. We do have other storms here and there, but the major storms, we've had, a handful in my lifetime. So is it something that we deal with every year? At this point, no. But is it something that, when it rolls around to June, which is when hurricane season starts, the responsible homeowners go ahead and make sure that you have your hurricane supplies ready with some water and, flashlight, batteries, that kind of thing? It is. It's one of the unique things about living in Texas. I like to point out that just about everywhere has some kind of natural disaster that is, native to that area. We have hurricanes. Other areas have blizzards. Other areas have earthquakes that we don't really deal with here in Houston. So another thing to watch out for in Houston is going to be the hurricanes. Speaking of blizzards, once in a lifetime thing, the 4th way that Texas can be difficult is we just had our once in a lifetime freeze apocalypse. Here in the Houston area, back in February, we did have a freeze, lower temperatures and lower constant freeze than has ever happened in my life before. That caused a lot of property damage. Again, much like a hurricane, the vast majority of damage from that was property damage. The pipes are just not used to that, and so a lot of what you saw in Houston was either electrical problems and then the electricity going out like it did across much of Texas, or pipes freezing, and then when the pipes were frozen and busted through, the water busted through the pipes, and you had some water damage in a lot of homes from that. That is not typical. That is not something we've ever seen in my lifetime, and my mother, who is twice my age, or almost twice my age, it's not something she's ever seen in her lifetime. So that was just kind of a weird fluke thing, but weather extremes we have here in Texas. We have the extreme heat, we have the extreme hurricane, and apparently, once in a lifetime, we have an extreme cold. So we've got heat, we've got hurricane, we've got freeze-apocalypse, we've got snakes, which really, in my experience, have not been that big of a problem, but seem to be a thing people worry about with Texas. And then last but not least, we have fire ants. Out of all of these things, besides like the heat during the summer, fire ants are probably the most prevalent. Fire ants are exactly what they sound like. If they bite you, it feels like fire. This is going to be something that happens in the backyard. If you're not watching your yard, mowing regularly, things like that. It can happen at the park. When we moved into this home, we moved and we went to visit the park, and one of my kiddos stuck his hand in a fire ant bed, and so he had ant bites all over his hand. Typically, it's not going to be a major medical event unless you have an extreme allergy. But a lot of times with fire ants, what happens is your kid steps in them at the park. You got to strip their shoes off, strip their socks off, maybe strip their pants off to get the ants off of them. The kid's going to cry. You're going to brush all the ants off, pour water on the ants, get them all off, get your kid a popsicle. Everything will be fine. Is Texas really trying to kill you? Probably not. I love it here. It is my home, but those are just some unique things that you should know about if you are considering living here. If you have any questions about Texas, about high school football or George Strait, my goodness, leave a comment. Let me know. I am happy to help. I hope something really great happens to you today.